Even though it's impossible to achieve, many of us, especially those of Caribbean descent, black and brown folks, try to strive towards perfectionism. In this episode, I would like to talk about how perfectionism is instilled in us, how it affects us once we get older, and how to get away from it. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Agreeable Gray Area podcast. As always, I am your host, Leandra. Unless you've been listening to a different Agreeable Gray Area podcast, then whoever that host is that host. Anyways, I'm starting the episode a little bit differently this time because your girl took a break, not intentional, and I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos and just listening to podcasts and just hearing how it starts. I still don't have music yet. I don't know. I may add it to this episode. I more than likely won't. But just sit back and enjoy the episode. I know I've been gone for quite a few months. I couldn't believe my last episode was in August. That's insane. I could have sworn up and down it was September. I've just been, just kind of going through it in terms of just trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. Like, where do I want to go in terms of career-wise? So I've been trying to learn a lot of things, trying to do a lot of things. Unfortunately, podcasting doesn't pay. I know, shocker. I know this podcast is so amazingly done, so consistent. I am sure you are shocked that I do not get paid to make this podcast. Maybe one day. Low-key, I would not mind a career making podcasts. I think that would be a lot of fun, honestly. Because, you just get to talk with, ideally with people. I don't know if I'd want to just talk to myself. But I would do that too for money, shit. As I'm sure all of you know, I'm in therapy, so this topic has kind of been at the forefront of my mind lately. Even though I don't really talk about perfectionism per se with my therapist, I have been talking a lot about just how I grew up. I know, very cliche, very, very typical therapy, but it has been helping me realize a lot of things about myself. It's kind of one of those things where you're sort of forced to look at something that you thought you got over, but you really haven't. So this episode is very near and dear to me. I'm saying as if I already pre-recorded it. I'm just going to slap it on to this afterwards. I'm literally saying it right now as we speak. But first and foremost, I do want to talk about how this idea of perfectionism is kind of instilled in a lot of us. I know that a lot of my listeners are Black, especially first generation Black folks, either from the Caribbean, Africa, and I also have a lot of listeners who are African American, or what I would consider African American, because even though I guess I am technically, I am African American, but I consider myself more so Caribbean American. Like, I didn't grow up eating a lot of things that, Black folks whose parents and grandparents and great-grandparents grew up, who were born in America grew up eating, and just culturally, there's just a cultural difference. Sure, we have definitely a lot of similarities, but there's a lot of cultural differences as well. So I want to talk about how, especially being of Caribbean descent, and I'm sure a lot of non-Caribbean descent listeners will relate to this as well, especially if you are first generation American. Our families can be very harsh. Like, almost illegally harsh. Like, it's just a different level of harshness. I'm of Jamaican descent, so I'm going to be speaking more so in that perspective, in that lens. I'm also a millennial, a youngish millennial. I'm the last of 7. A lot of my siblings are older millennials, and I have a sister who's Gen X. So it's, I don't know. Like, I don't know how to, like, I guess it kind of puts me like in an interesting position because, growing up, I felt like I was just judged harshly for my quote unquote imperfections. And I know a lot of you all can relate to this. Like, it just felt like they always wanted to change like literally everything they deemed unseemly or unfit about me. Literally, like, they couldn't talk about anything else, especially my mom. Like, my mom comes into mind, and she's going to be listening to this, and she's going to have some things to say, but whatever, it's true. Literally every Jamaican mom, every Jamaican auntie, uncle, and any Jamaican adult, older adults, has said this to their niece or nephew or grandkid. For example, growing up, my mom would always make fun of or critique the way I was walking. Like, I don't know, I know that probably most of you listeners can walk, but you kind of need to walk literally everywhere, especially like in your house, you know? So if I'm walking to the fridge, if I'm walking from the fridge to the couch, and if she sees me walking and in this moment she feels like making fun of me, then she will. Not necessarily making fun of me, more so critiquing. And it's not even like a very simple, short critique. Just like, oh, you gotta straighten up. Nothing quick. It was always like, you gotta straighten up. You kind of do this, like, you kind of like whinge up your back. You kind of you kind of whinge up your butt when you walk. You look like this, and like she'll like try to mimic how I'm walking and start laughing. And like I was just minding my own business as like a 9-year-old or something. And I'm like, oh, okay. This lady who I've known my whole life, who when I gained consciousness, I was suddenly in this house with these people who are my brothers and sisters and, my dad and everything, is telling me, someone who hasn't really been out in the world really except for school, that I walk incorrectly. And real talk, like, that really messed me up. Like, I would just be getting so self-conscious about how I walk. I'm still self-conscious to this day, I'm not gonna lie. Because once again, it wasn't something that was said once in a while. It was something that was said, at least to me, like maybe to them it felt like once in a while because they were older. And, now that I'm older, I understand that time just moves differently. But back then, it just felt like all the time. It's just a key memory that how I walked was just incorrect. My mom still gets on me about how I stand. Yeah, how I stand is a problem. Like, I can't even stand correctly according to my mom. I remember one time during the height of the pandemic, this was 2020. My mom was still living with me at the time. And one of her friends one of her friends came over, and she was giving ginger beer to her friend. And, I wasn't really looking forward to this because, height of the pandemic, somebody's coming into my house. They're probably going to be wearing their mask all incorrectly. And like, it would have been fine if they just exchanged and, the ginger beer and went outside and talked. But, of course not. Like, like they're old people. You can't tell them anything. They'll just do whatever the hell they want. So They're in my house just talking, and I'm just like standing there kind of listening and talking a bit too, engaging in the conversation. And I have my arms folded, and I'm just like standing and talking. I was comfortable. Nothing, and nothing seemed to be of matter. I felt like the person was in my house for way too long, to my liking, but whatever. And then the friend left, and my mom came back inside because like she walked her friend to the car, and my mom came back and was like, "It's like, why were you standing like that?" And like she just like kind of like went off on me, not seriously loudly, but it was just like she has these expressions that just make it seem like what I'm doing is just so disgusting, so horrific that how could you ever in your life think of doing like standing in that way? Like, how could you do that? How could you have the audacity? Like, she has like this face that expresses that. And it's so confusing and it's so alarming because it's not a big fucking deal. Like, it's not a big deal at all. I guarantee you the person didn't even notice. I guarantee you they didn't even care. And the most important thing of all is, I don't care. I don't give a shit how this person sees me. I'll probably never see this person again. I'm not sitting here being so cognizant of every single thing that I am doing in order to make somebody else comfortable. And it was one of those moments that made me realize that that is how I grew up. That is why I have certain levels of anxiety at times. I don't know, I guess it depends. Like it's definitely not as bad as it was before, but I've definitely had times when I was, had some serious anxieties. Growing up, like when I was a kid, and like I would just try to, talk to my mom about something. Like she would always make fun of my voice because, as you can tell, I have a pretty monotone voice. I guess my mom's a little hard of hearing. Of course, I didn't know that growing up, because you do kind of have to talk a little loudly to her because she talks kind of loudly, but she doesn't realize that. So it took me a very long time to realize, but I think she has a little bit of hard of hearing, in my opinion. I don't know, not a doctor. So I would just be saying something, and then instead of just her asking, "Oh, what did you say?" or "What? Can you repeat that?" she'll mockingly make fun of how I sounded, laugh about it, and then ask me what I said. Like that's just, yeah. So I would be, and like, I'm a kid. I'd be like 4, 5, 6 years old. I don't know anything. I know like 5 things. And all 5 of those things, my parents taught me. Like I was taught by the people, by my brothers, sisters, parents, like I don't know anything. And I know I sound like I'm whiny. And trust me, I do have a point at some point. Once again, it was just constant. So after a while, you kind of just disassociate and stop talking and just kind of keep to yourself, because if you're trying to share something with somebody and you're constantly, like my brother would constantly make fun of every single thing that I liked or liked doing. So if I got excited about talking about like anime or video games, even though those were things that he also liked, he would make fun of me about it. So I stopped talking to him about stuff. Like what do you think is going to happen? Like my mom would sometimes get on me about how I would be sitting. Like as a girl, you have to sit with your legs crossed or legs closed. Because reasons, I don't know. Men are wild beasts in the world, and they can't control themselves, I guess. And you're just taught that as a kid, or I don't know. But or even if like my legs were not even open or something, like if I was sitting and I had some kind of look on my face, it would be a problem. Like you can't even exist. like literally. Like I was going to say something more. Literally, you can't just exist. You existing is somehow problematic. It's just a problem. And you just have to deal with that sometimes. And what would be even more annoying is my mom would think she knows what's wrong with me. And she would think it would be like some boy, the only boy that she ever knew that I dated besides my current boyfriend. She would just assume it's that boy. So, like, of course, I never really told her about the other guys that I've dated, because why? So she can use it against me? No, of course not. So she's just gonna forever think it's just this boy from middle school while I'm away at college. You know? Like, when I think back on it, it's actually kind of funny. Because it's like, she could have just asked. She could have just asked, like, hey, are you dating anybody? Are you talking to anybody? Is anybody that you're like, no, nope, never. Yeah. No, it's like she just saw me as somebody and decided that that's who I was. And I know that a lot of Black folks and, Caribbean folks can definitely relate to that, whether it's like with nicknames that family members give you or anything. You do something one time and you're just forever that. And never want to get to know you outside of that. So, like, it's, yeah, like, it's pretty sad when you think about it, because, like, I know all of you are very interesting people, and to just be defined as this one thing because of something that you did when you were 8, and then your family and people in your life, or mainly your family, are just assuming you're something along that realm of what they deemed you at 8 years old. Hopefully I'm making sense. I think I am. For example, my dad's father, my granddad, he gave me the nickname of Grandma. And I never really knew, like, why exactly, I guess. But my brother said it's like, oh, yeah, because you just move so slow. You just talk so slow. You're like And I think my mom said the same thing, too. So it's like, oh, okay, that's nice. Who knows, more than, like, when I think back on it, more than likely my mom probably, or dad probably said something to my granddad and probably, made him, probably just talking some shit because they had, nothing really to talk about. And that's probably how I got my nickname. I don't know. I wouldn't really be surprised. Mind you, this isn't like a hating on my parents episode. It's just like when you're reflecting on things, you're like, yeah, that's totally something that did happen. Like, it's cool, it's whatever. It's just kind of unnecessary. It's not something that I necessarily want to be reminded of. That's just, I guess, how they know of me. So they just kind of hold on to that rather than, holding on to like a memory rather than getting to know me now. Growing up, because I have this monotone voice and I talk apparently slow. Like, I don't really think so. Like, I mean, Barack Obama speaks slowly and he was president, but, go off. So, like, whatever, no big deal. I was self-conscious about my voice. It wasn't until college I kind of got more comfortable with my voice. And it's not like I didn't really talk or communicate with people. And once again, it wasn't something that I was just constantly thinking about or whatever, but my voice was always something that, how it affects people, it was always something that I just kind of had in the back of my mind. Like, my brother, who I've, mentioned on this podcast several times, even earlier in this episode, who's like batshit crazy. There was a time when I was just trying to talk to him about something, but I guess I was speaking to him too slowly for his own good. And he just like lashed out at me because he just couldn't you know, listen for 15 seconds, I guess. And then he just did then afterwards he did like some bullshit apology. But, that's one of the many reasons why I just can't deal with him anymore. Like, I'm literally not even gonna see him for Thanksgiving because I really don't want to see him. There's just no reason to interact with this person anymore. Thought about it many a times. If he's in the same room, sure, I'll talk to him, but I don't really see a need to have like a relationship, like a brotherly, sisterly relationship with him. I feel like, especially as a woman, you're just kind of, especially as a black woman, you're taught to just kind of, turn the other cheek, forgive and forget, just be okay with everything that happens to you. And I am kind of tired of that because it just takes way too much energy out of me. So, yeah, no, thank you. One of the things I haven't mentioned that every human being relates to, especially of Caribbean descent, know that, you got aunties and uncles or even your own parents. If you haven't seen them in a while, like the first thing they say is, "Oh, you gained weight. Oh, you look fat. Oh, blah, blah, blah." It's like, oh, okay, cool. You could have asked me how I'm doing, asked me how the things I'm working on are. I'd love to talk to you about that, but yeah, let's talk about my weight. I remember one time when I was like 17, senior in high school or something, I had lost a lot of weight. And I mean, overall, I wasn't really like a big kid or anything really, but for whatever reason, I had lost a lot of weight over the summer. I think because I was just playing video games all day and just not eating. So I just lost a whole bunch of weight. I'm pretty sure there are like anime shows about that. But it legit happened to me. It was cool. Like, I liked how I looked. I can't remember if I felt like I was like fat or anything, but whatever. So I lost a lot of weight. And I remember my mom decided to say, like, first of all, my mom forever is always on about some 5 pounds in some direction. She would either want you to lose 5 pounds or gain 5 pounds. She'll be like, "Oh, you got to lose 5 pounds in a week." That's not even possible. Or, I mean, if you just don't eat that week, yeah, I guess you'll lose 5 pounds, but you can't healthily lose 5 pounds in a week. So do not try that. You might be able to lose a pound in a week, and that's like with hard work. But to lose 5 pounds in a week, but yeah, like my mom's always been like a huge stickler about your appearance and how you look. So of course, weight is a massive thing for her. And yeah, I had lost a lot of weight. Like I wasn't like malnourished looking or anything. Like I was still healthy. I just lost a lot of weight from playing video games all summer and not eating, really, not eating much. And one day she said, like, "Leandra, you look emaciated." And I've never heard that word before. And how she said it and like her voice and how she looked and she had like such a concerned look on her face that I just looked so skinny to her. She had to make some kind of comment. She couldn't just say nothing. Or just be like, "Oh, why'd you?" It's like, "Oh, you lost a lot of weight. Like, what happened?" And I would have just told her, "It's like, yeah, I just played video games all summer. I am 17." Like when you're that age, you can gain and lose weight in a snap by doing literally nothing. I guess she forgot that. So, now it was just weird and concerning, but I don't know. That's my mom. She has to get on you about something. She can't just accept you for who you are. Like, that's how she shows her love, by being absolutely annoyed and perturbed by something about you that she cannot stop talking about. I never really like once I had moved out on my own, like after college and everything, like I never really felt that self-conscious about my looks. Like I kind of did, but not, I guess because I was still kind of fresh out of college. So I still had that freedom feeling about me, I guess. Once she moved in 2019, it was just a whole different story because I had gained a lot of weight at that time. I was at probably my heaviest. I was at like 191, 192 or so. And, of course, a lot of things were changing about me mentally too because my mother left my dad. She just pretty much barged right into my life and into my house, pretty much. There was very little planning. And that's just how it started. Am I happy and proud of my mom for leaving my dad? Absolutely. Like, I was at my heaviest, and, then I had to get a new job because I was contracted. So I had to get like a real job so I could, financially take care of my mom, even though she was still going to work and all that. She would have to save up in order to move out. So I had to get like a more stable job for her. And, I remember getting ready for work, because we'd be getting ready for work at pretty much the same time. And I'd be happy about what I'm wearing. And she'd be like, "You're wearing that? You got a muffin top. You look fat." And I guess she doesn't quite understand and realize that her words matter. Like to this day, she doesn't think her words matter. Like her words affect all of us, all of her kids, more than she could ever imagine, more than she can ever fathom. And to just hear that not every morning, but at least once a week, you just hear some bullshit about how you look. She couldn't take a second to put herself in my shoes that, hey, okay, Leandra's parents split up. Her mother's living with her. She was living by herself for like 4 or 5 years or something. She had to get a new job. So she's she's still new at this job. And I am just gonna make her feel like shit before walking out of the house. I guarantee you that was never a thought that ran through my mom's head. I don't know. I don't know if Caribbean parents, especially, of course, I'm speaking more of the Jamaican Caribbean lens. I don't think they ever bother to put themselves in their child's shoes. Unless they're, of course, a therapist or something. But they never for a second think how they may be feeling, how this may be affecting them. And they never want to be positive to you. They think being positive is saying nothing. They think that what they say just goes in one of our ears and out the other. And I think it was pretty insulting for them to believe that based off of who we were as children and as teenagers. Because if we get to a place in our lives when we're adults, then you should understand as a fellow adult that who you were as a child and as a teenager is not quite who you are now. You would be hard pressed to find an 8-year-old homeowner. You'd be hard pressed to find a 16-year-old working a corporate job, making a salary, and is not an intern. You'd be hard pressed to find a 12-year-old at the car mechanic, waiting for their car to get fixed so they can drive to work the next day. You know, we've learned from our past, or we're trying to understand and process our pasts. And of course, we're different people today. However, we as children have seen our parents pretty much be the same person all of our lives, all throughout our lives, because by the time they had us, they were already adults. So it's just very weird. It's just like a very weird misunderstanding, imbalance. Like, if I'm taking the time out to understand where my mom is, or where my mom must have been while she was living with me, leaving her husband, who she's been with for just under 40 years, sort of thing, and how that must affect her, even though the relationship wasn't the best, and that my father was insanely problematic, and I'm saying that nicely. If I have time to understand that, put myself in her shoes, try to process that, I don't see why she can't do the same for me. I don't know why she can't do the same for all of us. Because it's a really good way to understand that you had children who were just growing up trying to be kids. They're going to walk funny, they're going to talk funny, they're going to have interests that you may not like. But you gotta at least understand that you don't want them to grow up with high levels of anxiety because you couldn't keep your judgmental thoughts to yourself, your critiquing thoughts to yourself. You couldn't control yourself to the point that to just not express yourself as if your child is literally a walking embarrassment to the family. You could have just let your child speak slowly. You could have let your child just be a kid at home. If you are critiquing literally everything that they do, they're going to go outside and question everything that they do to the point that they don't want to do anything. They're either going to not want to do anything, or they're going to want to do everything because they couldn't get the answers at home. They were just taught what not to do. And if what not to do was literally everything, then what do you expect them to do? Oh man. I would say the best way of getting away from the idea of perfectionism is literally to do what you want to do, is to try and fail, try and succeed, to stop thinking about your imperfections, quote unquote, so much. Because the things that you notice on people, you don't notice every single little thing on a person. And there are times when things that you may have noticed on someone, that little thing that you noticed that you thought was going to bother you doesn't even bother you anymore. The way that they speak, if they use the word like a lot, or how they walk, or, just these things that just make us human. You start to not really pay attention to that so much because you got a lot of stuff going on in your life. They must have a lot of things going on in their life. I guarantee you they know that they have a mole on their face. And I guarantee you that they have people in their life that can't stop mentioning the mole on their face. So you mentioning this thing that they probably had their whole life is not going to change them. You're not the mythical person who's just going to suddenly fix something that doesn't even need to be fixed. So I say all this to say, and I may redo this episode, just kind of stretching my lungs. Me. Oh, that guy from One Piece. More. So I say all this to say, you are fine how you are. You are fine how you are. If you have people in your life, they've probably noticed the imperfections and they probably don't give a shit. And if they do notice and even if they do notice the imperfections, they don't give a shit. They look past it and they keep it moving, because you are so much more than these tiny imperfections that you probably believe is bigger than life. Just because your parents may have thought something, just because your mom, your grandma, your sister, your cousin couldn't stop making fun of you about a particular thing, it doesn't mean everybody thinks that as well. It's always interesting whenever my friends mention their own quote unquote imperfections to me, because now that we're much older, like, a lot of you are 20s, 30s, maybe 40s and 50s, we've all met so many people in our lives that it's very rare to meet someone that just never had that imperfection that you probably are still self-conscious about, It's like meeting somebody with divorced parents, like it might still be a big deal to that person, but to you it's like, oh yeah, who doesn't have divorced parents? Or like, who doesn't know somebody with divorced parents? Like, like that's so common. Like, who doesn't know a guy who is short? Like, who doesn't know someone who walks a little weird? It's just interesting to think how our parents made us believe that nobody in the world was like you, and you gotta be like everybody else. That is so untrue. Thank you all so much for listening. I don't know when the next episode's going to be. I'm not even going to deny that. But I love each and every one of you equally. I don't like how y'all walk, though. I don't like how y'all listen, though. Y'all have some weird listening skills with your ears and stuff. Your ears gotta look like Barack Obama's, just ready for flight, ready for takeoff. Kidding. Anyways, y'all have a great time in life, I guess. Stop thinking so much about your imperfections. Guarantee people aren't thinking about it as much as you are, because are you thinking about other people's imperfections that much? Like, not really. You probably don't even know what they are. And that's how most people are. Like, they're not really out here looking. And if they are, it's because they're just mad self-conscious and are, assuming that everyone's thinking like this because their parents made them believe that. And it is bullshit. So with that said, my website is up, agreeablegrayarea.com, gray spelled with an A. Of course, you can email me at agreeablegrayarea@gmail.com. And I will see you on the next episode. Thank you. Ciao.